One.
Welcome to the Daily Objective. Since the war in Ukraine started, every now and then we collect the worst BS that goes on around about the war and we debunk them. Now, since the people who come up with these conspiracy theories or ridiculous takes or, as we call them, BS, since their point of reference is not reality, it's not that they see things and they comment on them, but they make up things. So every few months we come up with new material. So today we will focus with 3 of the latest BS bogus stories going around about Ukraine. And we're going to do it with James Valliant. Usually we have fun when we debunk videos or we debunk bad takes. Today we're going to do it on bad takes on Ukraine. So let's jump in without further delay. So the first bogus claim we're going to address today is that Ukraine is draining the US budget. Ukraine is draining the US budget. We hear it very often. Lately, it became a political issue because Rand Paul, supposedly the libertarian Congress, the libertarian person in the US Senate, said that actually he will not vote for the budget if it includes any money going to Ukraine. Now, let's see if this is a claim that makes sense. To begin with, we might agree that that the role of the government is not to appropriate money from its citizens and use it in the way they want, in ways that has nothing to do with the defense of its citizens. So this is an argument that makes sense. But their argument is not that. Their argument is not an argument of principle. The argument is this: we have a lot of problems, and giving money to Ukraine is just making us poorer. Now let's check this argument. So you'd expect from what they say, James, that the money that the US gives to Ukraine is, let's say, 20% of the US budget, right? Or 30%. Like it's so big. So the question is, what percentage of the US budget goes to Ukraine? Because if Senator Paul makes it such a big issue that it's my red line, you would think it's a significant amount of money. And yet, the US aid to Ukraine is somewhere between 0.3 and 0.4% of the budget. 0.3 and 0.4. Even within the defense budget,
right,
it's 5%.
Right. We're spending almost $1 trillion just on defense. It's just a teeny percentage of it. If you think about just discretionary spending, that's non-entitlement. That's not the retirement insurance program. That's not Medicare. It's just discretionary spending. That's $1.7 trillion for fiscal 2022 that the United States spent. $1.7 trillion, a small percentage of just the discretionary federal spending is what we're talking about here. You could make up for all the spending we've done on Ukraine by simply cutting back, say, certain energy programs or certain transportation programs. Truly, the discretionary, just interest on the national debt is $500 billion. It's almost $500 billion just for the interest on national debt. Talk about getting our priorities screwed up. It's not a question of resources. If you believe that helping Ukraine is in America's interest, is part of our important national security interests, then it would seem to me that we have a lot of spending that is a lot bigger on a lot smaller priorities that I would suspect a so-called libertarian senator like Rand Paul would be first to go after. Why don't we go after the Department of Energy or the Department of Education or the Department of Transportation or the Department of Housing and Urban Development? We could more than make up for all of the spending that we've done on Ukraine with just that. I'd just like to add one other thing. Recently, one of these conservative think tanks, the Heritage Foundation, they lost their director for national security policy because he disagrees with the Heritage Foundation. Now, they used to be a very hawkish organization on foreign policy, being right of center, filled with neocons and Reaganites and people like that. Well, they've changed their position. They say, and this is what the head of the Heritage Foundation now says, America has so morally declined. The family unit is so broken up morally. We have so many other priorities here, such as illegal immigration and so forth. We can no longer, America is just not the way it was back in Reagan's time when we could take a moral stance against Russia. That's literally what he said. And the national security guy who's over at Heritage quit over this just in recent weeks. So the conservatives are taking this incredible veer in this, making ridiculous arguments about how America has been in decline and how we have priorities here at home. The spending of which only makes it worse in most cases. So the whole argument is ridiculous to me. They could find the money easily in several other places. This is, as you point out, a teensy bit of just the defense spending, much less federal spending in the United States.
This is the equivalent, people, of someone having an addiction to alcohol, to prostitutes, to gambling. Like, I'm talking about the guy, who goes out to gamble and returns home. He has even given his watch. He only has his shirts on his shoulder and he walks home. He can't even afford a taxi. And then when he thinks, okay, what do I need to fix in my life? He says, I need to cancel my Netflix subscription. That's my problem.
Yes, it's that streaming service. It's really putting me back.
It's the €6 per month in my streaming service that is causing me the problems.
Perfect analogy.
It's absolutely pathetic, and we see it all the time. Whenever we see a tweet about, let's say, there's a bridge that needs maintenance or there's a flooding, the useful idiot of the new right, the useful idiot conservative or libertarian will say, see, but we spend our money in Ukraine. So apparently he cannot think about the 99.7% of the budget, but he's so fixated in the 0.3% of the budget. And again, the question is why. We're going to try to answer the question on why. So talking about ugliness, let me take a short break from ugliness and say a big thank you to Quent Cordair Fine Art for sponsoring this episode. Quent Cordair Fine Art has been making the world an even more beautiful place for 27 years. They specialize in romantic art. They specialize in romantic realist paintings and sculptures. And the collection emphasizes themes that will be familiar to us, celebrating the moments of happiness, joy, and success possible to man. You can acquire art that you'll want to live by visiting them online at cordair.com or in their Napa, California or Jackson, Wyoming locations. And there's a new series with Ayn Rand portraits. For every print purchased with the code ARCUK, Quent Cordair Fine Art will donate $25 to Ayn Rand Center UK. So you go and buy one of the Ayn Rand portraits with the code ARCUK, the Cordairs will donate $25 to Ayn Rand Center UK. So again, a big thank you for your contribution and for making the world a more beautiful place. Going back to ugly things. So we talked about the bogus claim, one, that it's draining our budget. Here's a second bogus claim, which even Elon Musk, as we will see in our screen, couldn't help but jump into. And again, I can't understand how someone who who must be of high intellect, someone who has revolutionized 3 different industries, can drop to the point where he shitposts things that would embarrass a 16-year-old basement dweller. So here we see apparently Zelensky's face in that famous meme, when it's been 5 minutes and you haven't asked for $1 billion in aid. So what does this mean? It means that Zelensky is a joke because he keeps asking money to continue his war. It means that Zelensky acts like a beggar. He's not someone who is to be respected. Now, this would make sense, let's say, in a world where there was a principle that says when you fight a war, you have to only do it with your own resources. Has this ever happened in history? Now, I'm not saying that this makes sense, but following their logic. If you see any major war in history, you will see that in almost every major war, the country that is defending itself or that is engaging in the war needs some extra funding. Think about World War II. How much money did the United States give not to someone who we can see as an ally, but someone who was an enemy, but within the context of that conflict, we say, okay, maybe for a while he might be an ally. So we gave Stalin the equivalent in today's money of 180 billion. We gave Stalin the equivalent of 180 billion. Does this mean that Stalin was a joke and that this war was fake, which is another conspiracy theory that I've heard, or that this war is a major scheme for Stalin to become rich or something like that? So these people are showing a complete lack of knowledge of history. And before I get to you, James, here's some other statistics, some other data. Alexander the Great, supposedly the biggest military leader in history, perhaps he was. Do you know what was the main source through which he funded his campaigns? One was obviously loot, but also loans. You guessed it right. So this idea that because Zelensky is going left and right and asking for aid, this makes him a cartoon, or this makes him a loser, or this makes him weak, shows that these people, supposedly the tough guys, supposedly the guys who are ready to fight for the country and are ready to take arms and defend their country, these people don't even know anything about history, and these people have a completely broken moral compass. So if you want to fight Zelensky, if you want to be with Putin, go openly and say, I'm with Putin. Finding these stupid excuses that, oh, Zelensky is asking for money, therefore he's a joke, this makes absolutely zero sense.
0 cents. You know, do we ask if Poland had a perfect government when Stalin and Hitler invaded it? Did we ask if France had a perfect government when Germany invaded it twice in the last century? Oh, how about the aid? How about we gave to Great Britain? Let's replace this meme with Winston Churchill's face. Winston Churchill is out there hat in hand begging America for money, and America gave Great Britain all kinds of resources during that war. So does that make Churchill a pathetic beggar, not engaged in a valid war against Hitler? I don't think so. The logic would be just the same. You could replace Churchill's face on that, but of course that would offend most people in the on the right in the West today. But that would be the equivalent, in my view. Not saying that Zelensky is the same as Churchill, or that Ukraine is the same as Great Britain when it comes to respecting rights or anything. What I'm saying is that if it's a valid war against a much worse government, and that's the reality we have to keep in mind. No, even we in Great Britain, the United States and Great Britain are not perfect. But the point is, what we're fighting is much, much worse. It's Russia that invaded Ukraine. That presents a threat to the West, a threat to NATO, a threat even to the United States. Once we decide that, once we say that is an aggressive threat of international force, then the priorities become clear then. We have to stop it. And saying that he's going out, with hat in hand, begging Western countries for money, well, of course that's what he's doing. He's not a rich country. He's the victim of an invasion by a more powerful military. And it's been going on for years. That kind of meme is just so stupid and insulting, morally and factually insulting to my intelligence, that you're absolutely right. How could a man who presumably has the IQ of Elon Musk even come out with such a thing that is just so irrational?
And the thing is, if you are a conservative, they've kept telling us that the West is in decline. Why? Because there are no men willing to stand up for traditional conservative values. Here you have a prime minister that his country is attacked, that the West gives him an escape route and says, I don't want to escape, I want ammunition. This guy should be a symbol for conservatives, and yet they despise him. He fights a country which has, I had the data here because they're difficult to comprehend. Ukraine, before the beginning of the war, had 1/10 of the budget of Russia, and it had 1/4 of personnel in their army. This is a David versus Goliath battle. This is the kind of the battle you conservatives would be talking to your kids about if it happened in a previous era and if it included actors, different protagonists. But now, because it's Zelensky, and because Zelensky is someone that your enemies like, so you hate Biden, but because Biden supports Zelensky, immediately you claim that Zelensky is bad. So your judgment doesn't work. The way your judgment works is you see what other people, how other people estimate the situation, and then you automatically take the opposite view. So I would respect if you said, look, Mr. Zelensky, out of principle, we're against spending a single penny abroad. So we cannot give you money, but you have our moral support, yay for you, screw Putin, you have all justice and right by your side. But notice that they don't do that. So every excuse that they give is just a cope. What they actually after is they just want Ukraine to lose and Russia to win. So that's all. All these stupid claims or these bogus claims are just cope.
If they were fact-oriented, if they were focused on the facts that you just mentioned, how it's a David Goliath situation, how it poses a threat to Europe as such, if they could see that this is causing Russia and China and North Korea and Iran to work all the more closely together, if they could see the factual issues here, rather than I hate Putin because Biden, or I love Putin, or I prefer Putin. Well, how is Putin any different than Zelensky? Well, why? Because Biden is now supporting him. Oh, I see. You're absolutely right. It's the friend of my enemy must be my enemy, or the enemy of my enemy must be my friend. And that is always wrong logic. That is always the wrong method to start your thinking with. Always.
So to sum up this point, the fact that Zelensky is asking for money takes zero away from the heroism of his position. In the same way that Alexander the Great does not become less of a military figure in history because he based a big part of his campaign, he based it on loans and loot. Anyway, bogus claim number 3, which is the one that I find most hilarious, is that our aid to Ukraine, the US aid to Ukraine, is a huge money laundering scheme. So this appears, as all good conspiracy theories, in different versions. So you have one version, it's debunked, then you find, then a new version comes up, which is even more hilarious. Let's see the original version. This is the Despicable Libertarian Party for New Hampshire. This is, by the way, one of the few tweets, of the few deplorable tweets that they deleted because they thought the anti-Semitism in it is a bit too much. If you see how the Bankman Fried, or how this guy is called at the top, looks like. But anyway, what does this mean? So the conspiracy theory is this: United States is giving money to Ukraine in terms of they want to launder this money, and then Ukraine sends the money back to the Democratic Party. You got it? So basically, the whole point of us, quote, helping Ukraine is that we want to become richer and launder dirty money. Who knows from what? Maybe from Epstein's Island, from Pizzagate. I don't know what is the...
And no matter how you look at the Biden, Hunter Biden influencing peddling scandal, talk about a dinky percentage. It certainly cannot be a money laundering scheme for that operation, whatever you think of that influence peddling thing. Now, where do they come up with these arbitrary postulates? And then they, as you point out, they get refuted. No, it doesn't look like that. Well, no, they just come up with another one, and then they'll just come up with another one, as if there's some kind of... Now, it's true, when you send tens of billions of dollars somewhere, I want it to know where it's going and have some idea of that, but I'm not sure in a war situation I want all the details. I want some of it. I want Ukraine to be able to spend that money in ways that maybe aren't publicized and known to Russia. But more than that, where do they get the idea? You see, the idea is in their head that the Ukraine itself is one giant criminal operation, part of this money laundering. I don't know where maybe they get from Hunter Biden's story or something, which, as I say, is just infinitesimal compared to the money we're talking about here. But where do they get this idea? I mean, they're arbitrary postulates, obviously designed, ginned up, because they already don't like the war in Ukraine. And from what I can tell, they are sympathetic, if anything, to Vladimir Putin. That's all I can figure.
So again, I would totally respect someone saying we should not get involved with this war, but make it in a way that is principled and is based on facts. So here is what where the BS on this one stands. And this is why these people are so low intelligence. If you wanted to launder money, the worst possible way to do it would be via Ukraine. Because you have half of the political establishment of your country being against this operation, you have the Russian secret services, which would be 100% on it. So seriously, of all the ways in the world you can launder money, you would do it in the most kind of visible, in the area that has all the light, the headlights of the world public sphere. Like how stupid must you be to believe this theory? Also, we shouldn't debunk something which is arbitrary, but for the sake of the discussion, we'll do it. The aid to Ukraine is monitored by something like 14 different bodies, including bodies outside of the United States, including at some point the World Bank when it comes to, first of all, most of the aid is not like cash.
Right.
So these people probably think that we send like bags with cash, and then the mafia in Ukraine, led probably by Zelensky or whatever they have in mind, kind of take. This is not how aid works. Of course, they wouldn't know because they wouldn't bother spending 5 minutes.
That's what they give you, this impression that shiploads of cash money or bars of gold are being sent personally to Zelensky instead of going through organizations and having the light, like you point out. That almost makes me laugh hard, because the lights of the world, the spotlights of the world are focused right on this more than any other issue. It's not like you're sending it through 20 shell corporations to launder money. What you're doing is you're sending it to some of the biggest organizations that are most carefully monitored in the world to send this money through, like NATO or the World Bank and all these other organizations, as you point out. They're pretty careful about their accounts, whatever else we think of them.
Anyway, the funny thing is that something like a year ago, this FTX, so the idea again was we send money to Ukraine, and through FTX, they send the money back to the Democrats, which also doesn't make sense. Like, wouldn't Ukraine want to keep that money since they have them, since they're in a war? But anyway, now the funny thing is that this conspiracy theory left the scene for the last many months. So now they will just tell you that Ukraine is a big money laundering operation, but they won't even bother to tell you why. And I invite our audience to do this. Go to Twitter, put Ukraine money laundering, and you will see how many prominent conservatives, prominent culture warriors of the new right are actually buying into this with zero evidence. Zero. Not even. So they don't even have a working conspiracy theory. Now they've reached the point they will just throw the bullshit out there, hoping that you will buy it. So at the end of the day, dear audience, if I would be the audience of these people, of the new right, of the Libertarian Party, I would feel embarrassed, because I would feel that these people undermine my IQ so much. Yesterday, and the same applies, of course, with the Russians. Yesterday, I saw a Russian official claiming that they quote, liberated an orphanage somewhere in Ukraine, and they found evidence that the Ukrainians are selling orphans to the West. And to whom? Particularly to Coca-Cola. And how could they? Because they said, we found the receipts. So imagine how stupid they consider you. Coca-Cola would go and buy orphans from Ukraine, of everywhere in the world, and they would send an invoice as Coca-Cola. This is their estimation of your intelligence. And let me tell you something. If you believe these conspiracy theories, they are right. The Russians are right. Your intelligence is to the point where you probably, sooner or later, you'll believe that Coca-Cola buys orphans from Ukraine, and also they send an invoice that says, thank you, Coca-Cola.
That is insane. That is absolutely insane. You know, just look at the university loan program. I don't know how much international press it's getting, but Joe Biden, the president, has been trying to forgive the student loans that the federal government gives to university students. So, forgive those loans. That in itself costs tens and tens, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars to actually do. And so when you hear all this bitching and moaning about how we have problems here at home and how we should spend money overseas and stuff, well, just university is a right to a university education, a right that truck drivers should pay the children of wealthy parents to get? No, it's obviously unfair on the face of it. And yet that is about the same level of money that we're talking about with the total aid to Ukraine. So this whole argument that we have problems here at home, we can't afford it overseas, is totally bogus. And so it must be supported by a bunch of arbitrary postulates. They're going to try and find any argument, even without any basis for fact. And you're absolutely right. In recent weeks, they're just saying it without providing us a reason for believing that it's a money laundering. You're just supposed to assume that it's a money laundering operation because they don't like the spending. They prefer Putin over Zelensky. That's what it feels like.
At least people give us a conspiracy theory that we can spend 5 minutes to do some research to debunk it.
Exactly. Something we can refute.
We're going to be out of topics. So a big thank you to Roland for your super chat, and a big thank you to Jonathan Honig being very loyal with his viewings and with his contribution. 6 p.m. UK time today, we have the reality show on COVID lockdown justified with a question mark, and 10:30 p.m. TV talk with Mark Pellegrino, Zach, and Jennifer on the after party. So here's my final thoughts on this, what is happening here. My motto when I wrote the Tribalism book is that tribalism makes you stupid. Tribalism makes you think not with your own minds, but based on the judgment of others. And again, here we have the proof. Here we have Elon Musk and other people who I'm sure at some point in their life, they were intelligent, just espousing every sort of BS. And at the end of the day, tribalism makes you stupid, and then it makes you immoral because it makes you standing with the aggressor and not with the defender. And you contribute to the world being an uglier and more a place where evil can find more fertile ground. So, James, final thoughts.
You said it better than I could have. I would be brilliant, my brother. No, this is a great example of what you talk about in your book. It really is. Tribalism, it is necessarily I lose brain cells when I hear some of these arguments. And more than that, as you point out, it's the results of losing brain. If we're not rational, the downstream results are going to be that we're not going to be moral. That is, you put it perfectly. We're going to end up sanctioning vicious, aggressive authoritarians like Putin who are invading smaller countries. Now, when you find yourself like that, it's time to check your premises, ladies and gentlemen. And I would ask all of the Tucker Carlsons and all the Heritage Foundations and all of the conservatives out there who are bitching and moaning about support for Ukraine to check their premises and maybe give the facts, some respect and a glance once or twice.
But let's not end with the people who add to the ugliness of the world. Let's end with the people who add to the beauty of the world. And this is Quent Cordair Fine Art, who were kind enough to sponsor this episode. They've been making the world a more beautiful place since 1996. They specialize in romantic realist paintings and sculptures, and their collection emphasizes on themes that celebrate the moments of happiness, of joy, and success that is possible to human beings on Earth. Acquire art that you will want to live with by visiting them online at cordair.com, or you go to their physical space in Napa, California, and Jackson, Wyoming. There's the new Ayn Rand portrait prints, and if you buy them using the code ARCUK, Quent Cordair Fine Art will donate $25 to Ayn Rand Center UK. So many thanks to the Cordairs. James, always fun to debunk BS with you. We're going to be back soon because BS never ends. A huge thank you to our audience and our super chatters. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Take care.